Almost 5 years to the day that David de Caires died, and I spent many happy hours discussing mainly sport and gambling with him, but one or two perhaps more important things as well. So it's nice to be back here. Nice to see the two gentlemen alongside me, Winston, and in particular Clive, a fellow Lancastrian. Our careers didn't quite overlap. Clive finished with Lancashire in 1986. With a duck, I think, in a NatWest final. Was that right?
It was. I can say I went out like Bradman.
And I started in 1987. But I feel as though I've known Clive all my life because my parents used to take me to Old Trafford in the mid-1970s, late 1970s, when Clive was playing so beautifully for Lancashire. He played a long time for Lancashire, so I feel I've known him all my life. And I wanted to start really by a bit of a comparison because I have a clear memory as a kid sitting in the stands at Old Trafford and watching Clive bat and hitting the ball straight out of the ground at Old Trafford and into the railway lines. Many people here won't have been to Old Trafford, but there's a very famous railway line at the back of the ground. And I can remember as clear as anything Clive hitting the ball clean out of the ground. You'll confirm that, won't you? You did that?
A couple of times, yes.
So what I wanted to ask was, everybody says the game progresses, that these guys like Chris Gale hit the ball further than anybody has ever hit the ball. But I have never seen anybody hit the ball out of Old Trafford since you've done it. And it's not going to happen again because they've turned the square round at Old Trafford now. So do they hit the ball further these days? Does Chris Gale hit the ball further than you did?
I don't know, but he hits it often. And probably the bats that they have, the bats now do have a lot of meat. And if you really connect, it can go for miles. And he's a very strong boy. And I must tell you that Chris Gale has some massive shoulders. But it's not only Chris Gale, even the little shorter fellas are now hitting the ball just as this Coley and the Sharma. You know, you have quite a Watson from Australia, and they are doing quite well. I think the bats are much better now than they were before.
Well, I went to a bat maker. Gray Nichols were the bats that I used to use, and the bat maker said that essentially you can mishit balls for six these days. So in the old days, when me and you played, you had to hit the ball right in the sweet spot to hit it far. But they reckon now that the sweet spot is much bigger, so you can almost miss-hit sixes. Enough of that. Let's go back almost to the start. I want to go back right to the start of your captaincy, really, of the West Indies team. You took the West Indies team to Australia in about, was it 1975-6 or 74-5?
75.
And you got an absolute thrashing. You got beat 4-1, I think.
5-1.
5-1. Could you sense, as a very young captain, right at the start, that the great years were coming? I mean, you know, that was a heavy, heavy defeat there, and Australia were rampant, and yet that sparked off, you know, some of the great years of the West Indies cricket team. And I wondered, as a young captain there, were the signs there that you had a great team in the making?
Well, first, I must say I had no experience of being captain. I was chosen at random. And I remember I'd made 100 against Yorkshire in the Roses game for Lancashire. And a fellow called Howard Booth, you would remember, and who wrote for the Mirror. And he said, congratulations, Clive. And I said, the pitch was a good pitch and so on, and they're very kind to me and so on. He said, no. I'm talking about captain of the West Indies. You've been chosen as captain of the West Indies. And I said, really? So that's how you were told in the old days that you were captain of your nation. I didn't get a letter or anything like that, you know. So it was new to me. So I was on a learning process really, and we went to India, did very well. We did, you know. You could have seen that people like Viv Richards and Gordon Greenidge and so on, Alvin Kali-Churan, Andy Roberts, they were all coming through during that time. And we lost Lance Gibbs, funny enough, played there. He played during that tournament. And then we went to Australia. And, you know, I thought we had a pretty good chance of doing well. So we lost the first test, and we won the second test in 3 days. and then we lost the other 4, but I would think the umpires played a major part in that. And the point is that I said to myself, if you're beaten 5-1 and you can beat the opposition in 3 days, then something looks wrong there. And when I realized that when we had the full complement of players, that's when we won. Because we suffered a lot of injuries during that period. Our fast bowlers, some of them got their arms broken. I got hit in my head a couple of times. Bernard Julian had his hand broken. Van Bernhold, and these were bowlers. And Viv got hit. So it was a rough tour, it's no doubt about that. But we took it in our stride. And I realized then that if you can beat a side in 3 days that has beaten you 5-1, then there's hope. And we went away and we worked at a lot of things, especially our training. I don't think we trained enough. We didn't do well in that area. And we had youngsters, and they were easy to work with because, as most mothers here would know, you bend the 3 wides as young. And the guys, for some reason, took to me. And I think as a captain of the West Indies team, it's not like India or England or Australia. You were captaining different islands with different attitudes and so on. Being a West Indian, it's not like being an Englishman or Pakistani. You're one country. We're several nations. And you had to bring that team together. And you had to work very hard because trust was important. If they didn't trust you, they were never going to run through walls for you. So they were thinking, is he going to pick all Guyanese and so on? So that situation you had to balance. And the point is, we shared everything. Anytime we won anything, I would go and I would speak with at dinners and so on, and the money that I got went straight into the pool. If we won test matches and it went straight into the pool. So everybody shared. So we became that unit that we wanted, that glue that kept us together. And I did not have 2 Guyanese together. I always had a Trinidad and a Barbadian, Guyanese.
You mean rooming?
Yeah, rooming. Because in those days,
in those days, you had to room, you had
Yeah.
to share rooms. And
Yeah.
obviously, these days, players are paid so much money that they have single rooms and all that kind of stuff. But back then, you had to share rooms on tour.
But I think that is wrong too, what they're doing now. Because when you have a young player who's coming in his first tour, he wants somebody to speak with at night. And he has no one really. He goes to bed on his own. And the other thing too, I think the bribing situation. The bribing situation now with the match fixing, you have a better chance of doing that because he's on his own. But if you have a roommate, it's very difficult to do so. So I think all those things that we took into consideration. We didn't have an analyst. We didn't have. Sometimes we had assistant manager. But when we had a manager, I saw him when the games were on. I saw him at lunch. I saw him at tea time and the end of the game because he was up drinking with the hobnobbing with the stars. So the point is, we didn't have that problem. When I was captain, then I had to pick the team. I had to run the nets, organize training. Then you have to speak to the press whenever there's cricket. So it was a full-time task. Now they have a batting coach, a bowling coach, an analyst. They have a priest. They have quite a lot.
The West Indies team needs a priest more often than not.